All right. We are still here with Brianna Castillo. Yes, we've done 2 videos together so far. The big question I got that I answered from a mortgage standpoint, but we just did something as a first time home buyer seminar, and somebody came back, is now a good time to buy, or is it better to wait? So I answered this. We'll see how much Brianna Castillo, Realtor extraordinaire, we'll see how much her opinion either differs or is the same as mine. So is this a good time? And the taping, just for context, guys, it is the start of 2025. So the housing market as a whole has less homes for sale, as a whole has been slow the last 12 to 24 months. Interest rates, for those that are asking, ballpark, we're just going to call them 7%. So depending on when you watch this video, if it's 10 years from now, obviously it's not relevant. But right now in this market, 2025, is this a good time? And we'll put this in the bubble of Dallas, Fort Worth, greater North Texas area. Is this a good time to buy a home?
Great question. I'm going to make the assumption that this is a first-time buyer, not somebody that currently owns a home.
Ooh, let's do two. Let's go part A and part B. So let's go first time
Okay.
home buyer question. Is
Okay.
this a good time to buy?
I make that assumption because if you are a first-time home buyer, the answer is so much easier, I think, in my opinion. The answer is resoundingly yes. It is a good time to buy. It is always a good time to buy your first house. I think it is always a good time to buy your
I
first
will,
house.
I will come back on that, but let's keep going with your answers for the
Okay.
moment. So first time
No,
home buyer,
because
why is that? Why do we think that?
you have to get in the market. You have to get in and start building equity. So there's you know what this is, but the people listening might not. You have to get onto that property ladder, right? You have to get on the first rung of the ladder. We're not trying to buy the dream house. Okay, maybe you can't afford the dream house because of those 7% interest rates or because of your job situation or whatever. You just need to get in the market and buy a house. Then and that will help you build wealth. You will build equity, right? The house is
How do you
going
build equity? How do I build equity? If I buy a home, how do I build equity?
number one, the house appreciates. What that means is the value of the house rises with the market.
Over
And
time, right? She's
yes,
not making
over
any
time. Yeah,
claims. It's
not
not going
not
to make any claims.
overnight.
It's not guaranteed, but historically,
Eh,
historically, house prices go up. And when you own it, you bought it for X many years down the road, or even a year from down the road in some markets, it's worth more than what you paid for it. So that's the appreciation piece. What's number two? How else do I build equity?
You pay down what you owe. So you pay down on the principal. You're decreasing how much you owe on the property. So even if in this crazy world your house never is worth more than the day you bought it, you're paying down the debt that you owe. And
That's right.
that
So when a guy like me gets you a
equity.
mortgage, when you use the Mortgage Mark team, because we're so amazing, wonderful, incredible, we will talk you through it. But as you make your monthly payments, little by little over time, you owe less money. So if you were to go to sell it, in Brianna's example, even if you sold it for what you paid for it, over time, you're at least getting a portion of that balance paid down so that you owe less when you there's actual equity as opposed to rent. Like the old mortgage joke is when you pay rent, your interest rate's 100%, right?
Right?
Because you don't get anything from
All
it.
lost.
And the
Yeah.
third one, so not necessarily from an equity standpoint, the third benefit, so there's three financial benefits, which Miss Brianna hit two. What's the third one, Miss Brianna?
You're writing off the interest that you have paid on your personal income taxes
That's right. And property taxes as well.
and
So you
property
get to write
taxes.
off property taxes and interest. So you'll give Uncle Sam less money because you now have interest deductions and property tax deductions. So three financial reasons why you should buy. Give me some non-financial. Give me the emotional type. Like as a first-time home buyer, what are some good reasons why now compared to like versus renting? Just give me the common what you hear on your side. Why would somebody want to buy a home?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. Every time I meet with a home buyer, I ask one of the questions is why do you want to buy a house and why now? And I will tell you 90% of the time, people are like, "Hey, I'm just tired of moving." When you rent, you're almost forced to move because you are not in control of how much the rent is going to cost after your current lease expires. Like people get forced to move a lot more frequently when they're renting. They want to make a place their own. You can't always do that when you're renting. I want to paint the walls. I want to garden. I want to make this my own. I want to stop changing my address. That is honestly what I hear most often. They're like, I just know that I should. I know that this is the right financial decision and it's time.
I'll tell
So
you, I
like
remember
90% of the time.
I'll never forget buying my first house. It was actually a townhome. And I remember just walking, it was weeks, if not months. I just remember like every morning just kind of walking like, this is mine. Like there's just some sort
Yeah.
of emotional pride. To your point, yes, you get the stability, the predictability, right? Because if you get a normal air quotes normal fixed rate mortgage, your mortgage amount doesn't change. Taxes and insurance go up, but overall, way more predictable, way more stable. So I think there are times when you shouldn't buy, and I'm pretty sure you'll get this. So
Okay, tell me.
you're always, I'm going to say, hold on the always piece. I think there are times when it's okay not to purchase. If you had to
Okay.
guess, what are some, give me some examples that you can think
Yeah.
of why it's okay to not buy.
If you're not financially ready to buy,
That's a good
period,
one.
then it is not the right time to buy. If you are uncertain about your living arrangements, what I mean is like, oh, I might be transferred for a job in a year. Okay, then it might not be the right time to buy and commit.
Yep, I think you nailed it. Everything else I would say is underneath probably those two umbrellas.
Yeah.
Financially, if you're just not able, ready, or committed, and I think sometimes that's an excuse. So let me throw that out there too. Talk to a really good mortgage person, mortgage mark team, right? Talk to a really good mortgage person and make sure it really is that. I find that that's often just an excuse people use because they're scared. But I will tell you, to be a homeowner, well, I'll back up on that. So financially they use the excuse like I got to fix this or I got to pay this debt. No, you don't. A lot of times you don't have to. Now you may want to, but don't use that as a crutch. And if that's the plan, let's execute a plan and do it. So I agree. Job change, job instability. I'm about to start a business. I'm going to be relocated. I think anytime the duration gets smaller, where the uncertainty in the crystal ball doesn't take you out more than a year to 2 years, and there's a whole lot of things. I think what you said, the second one, which I don't know how you phrased it, but stability of life or whatever it is. Like I'm about to get married. Maybe we're about to have triplets, right? Um, I got to maybe go home and take care of mom for a while or an aging parent or something in my living situation. So when there's just that uncertain, when the crystal ball's foggy, I think that's the other good reason not to buy. And
Yeah.
then on the rare occasion, I think if somebody just doesn't want the responsibility, I know young guys, single guys are just like, man, I just don't want it. Don't have to deal with it. Don't. And I'm like, cool, you can buy a townhome or condo. No, want to be free, want to do what I want to do. Cool. So I think if you don't want to do it, certainly nobody's going to force you to do it. But I think those are reasons, some valid, some less valid, of why it's not a good time to buy. So we will do a part two because just to wrap up the first time homebuyer piece, but I'm gonna quiz you to see if you know. Miss Brianna, a net worth, a homeowner's net worth, how much greater is that compared to the average renter? The average homeowner compared to the average renter, how much more is the net worth? Do you know that answer?
Yeah, believe that I do. I have two answers in my mind. I know I'm like so confident it's one of them, and I really don't know which. I think it's either 3 times or 8 times, and I think it's probably 8 times.
Okay, it's eight
Or am
times
I
five.
wrong?
It's eight times
It's 8 times
five.
40?
40. 40x. The average homeowner is 40x bigger
What?
net worth than the average renter.
Yeah.
And again, you can argue that somebody making a ton of money is going to buy a home. And so maybe they have other investments and other things. But the reality is, a huge portion of that does come from just home ownership. And that's exactly your point about getting on the ladder, getting in the game. You buy that first house. I don't care. Let's just use 300 grand. 300 grand, you live there for 5 years. It may be worth 400 grand. And you paid your balance down to 250, making these numbers up, of course. So now you got $150,000 of net worth, whether you sell or not. It's real money on paper that when you sell it, gets to hit your bank account. So if you're a first time home buyer, don't let interest rates be the excuse. Because I give them two questions. Hey, do you think rates are going up or going down eventually in the next 3 to 5 years? Or are they ever getting lower than this? No. Well, then this is the lowest interest rate you're going to see. So you should buy right now.
Mhm.
And they say, well, no, I think eventually they'll go down. Perfect. You can refinance. So there's no let rates be the reason why you don't buy. Don't let, oh, there's a housing bubble coming. Guys, I don't see it. Brianna doesn't see it. Doesn't mean it won't happen. But long term, and that's why we both are in agreement, don't buy a house for 1 year, right? If you're only gonna be there for a year, really evaluate that because 1 year, who cares? But 5 and 10 years, historically in the United States, house prices appreciate, things are okay. Even in the worst of markets, things bounce back and get to where they once were. So again, a house is a home. It's not necessarily to be a financial, especially buying your first home. It's not an investment property. It's not all about the money. There's so many other reasons in there that matter. So, Miss Brianna, so this is part one. I don't know where we're
Wait,
going to
wait,
put the
before
link.
you wrap
Yeah,
this up, I need to add a personal story that is going to just put a seal on
hit
everything
me.
that you just said. My husband and I when we bought our first home, we could not afford, we had to borrow money for the down payment, and we had to borrow 25% of the purchase price just to be able to qualify debt to income ratio on that house. Like we couldn't afford it. And then we bought it to be able to pay the mortgage. We had to Airbnb a room in our house while we're living there. And we did. That house appreciated at a rate, we lived there for 5 years. That house appreciated at a rate that was more than per year, more than my previous salary. Okay, so it's like I bought myself an income, and it's what allowed me to be in the house that I'm in now. It has gigantically impacted our wealth by
So, guys,
buying
I will put a
our
little
house.
disclaimer somewhere. This is not a guarantee, a future predict, whatever. But the reality
Yes,
is, that's a great
the
story.
real
I
world
too,
studio.
the house I'm in was bought basically through real estate. I once owned 16 rental properties. It took me years and years. We'll do a whole nother series on that. But I couldn't agree more. I think real estate is the best way in America to start off and to gain personal net worth. The house you live in, no brainer. All right, so we're not going to make a separate video because if we make a separate video in this 30 seconds. All right, so we've just covered the first time home buyer. We both believe no brainer with some qualifiers, right? If you're financially feeling comfortable, but even you can give examples of Airbnb to room, right? The house hacks. You can do things that even if you're financially not ready, you can figure out a plan to get there. Borrow the 25% from mom or dad, brother, sister, or, not allowed to borrow, but gift, whatever it's called. What about, is this a good time to buy? So go back to the original question.
Yeah.
Is this a good time to buy if you're not a first time home buyer?
Yeah. And
Why?
that I would say, so this one is slightly more complicated. And I think it just depends on the why. The why do you want to buy, what's driving the move?
Give me examples. Why would you, should you, why shouldn't you? I like that answer. I don't have a better one. So far, keep going.
Um, well, I want more input from you on this one. I feel like I'm in the hot seat and I feel like I'm gonna give the wrong answer. I think because, well, here's an example. What you just said, our interest rate's gonna go down, our interest rate's gonna go up.
They're
If
going
they're
to
gonna
go up.
then great, then you should buy right now
Yep.
because it's only gonna get worse. Our
They're going to
interest
go
rate,
down eventually.
are they gonna go down? Awesome. Then you can refinance. So in that situation, you should still move, but you should purchase a house that you can afford with today's current interest rates. Don't bet on them going down, and buy a house that you can afford once the interest rates are down. Don't necessarily take on so much risk like I did with my first house. Uh,
You know what we
buy what's
say, not what we
comfortable.
did.
Yeah, yeah, buy what's comfortable for you. But the reality is it's a great market. Right now is a very balanced market. This is a good time to buy. If interest rates do go down and you waited because you wanted to wait for interest rates to go down, the market is going to get far more competitive than it is right now from the buy side, and you're going to pay more for that house.
That's
That's
exactly
why
what
you
I
need
was
to
going to make.
buy
I mean, right now, it's
that's why you need
exactly
to
the
buy
point.
what you can afford, and then you can refinance. And if you need to move again in the future, well, and interest rates go down, competition is going to enter the marketplace, and your house is going to appreciate, and you're going to be able to afford that next step house that much easier.
1,000,000%, guys. She nailed it right there, right? So, yeah, and this goes back to the first time and second, anytime. Right now, with rates being, perceived as being higher than they should be, there's not as much competition. There are people on the sidelines. I believe they shouldn't be, but there are. Some of them are sidelines. They just truly can't afford the home at 7% rates or whatever they are today. But I think it's a fantastic time because Miss Brianna hit the nail on the head. When rates go down, more and more people are then eligible or able or willing to buy a home, which supply and demand just kicks in and it goes up. And the other part, which we won't get into for this video, I do think there's an equal balance. I think we're at a good state where there's not this oversupply. There are too many, the entire generation of millennials is just now starting to hit the home buying age, which is now higher than it used to be, but it's 35 to 38 because they get married, they have kids, and that prompts the catalyst of people buying homes. Like there's just not this oversupply of market that people are worried about the 0708 crash. I tell you, it was 07, yeah, 06 is when there was all the craziness. But again, it's just a very different world. So I think now is a good time to buy if you're ready. And for all the things we already talked about, I love it. Brianna, like, you're the best. I appreciate you, and we'll see you guys soon.